system unfolding. Military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Welcome to the show. Today we are talking about Starship Troopers. And we have feelings about Starship Troopers. We're sensitive snowflakes when it comes to Starship Troopers. Um, I actually don't like this movie very much. There are things that I kind of like about it, but I think when it comes to
There's Dina Meyer, and that's
I know.
both things I like about it.
Listen,
It's true.
there's some hard truths that need to be talked about before we start talking about this movie. One,
Okay, go.
no one actually thinks that this is a good movie.
Good
But you
point.
have to understand that no one thinks that this is a good movie.
First of all, I've not read the book. Starship Troopers, my only Starship Troopers is the movie, and that's all that matters to me. I love this movie.
You can love it. It's just it's not good. I
It
love
is
it.
for what it is. It's good. It wasn't meant to be a serious movie.
No,
Oh,
well,
it
I think-
absolutely was.
I think even as a
That's the thing.
satire, it's too ham-handed. Like,
Yeah, that's that problem. People at the time kept saying, "Oh, you don't get it. It's a satire." No, it's very freaking obvious it's a satire. He hits you over the head with a big rubber hammer like in a old cartoon and says this is a satire. It's just a bad satire.
Listen, you can
I'll
enjoy
give you that.
something that's bad. It's okay. Paul Verhoeven's entire career is about making movies that are bad that people enjoy.
why can't I that guy's magic sauce?
To be fair, he probably was trying to do too many genres at the same time, and he's trying to do satire and war commentary and action and all of that stuff, and it's probably too much to put in one film.
And in 1980s high school
Drama.
Yeah.
locker room
Yeah.
movies.
100%.
The other thing I want to point out about this movie is it actually isn't a Starship Troopers adaptation, despite the name. They took a script that already existed called Bug Hut on Planet B or something, and they just put the names from
P,
the books.
I think it's P.
Yeah, they put the names from the books
Mhm.
into the script. They made a few changes and called it good. It isn't actually an adaptation of the novel, nor are really any of the themes of the novel in the movie.
Well, I think they tried to squish in
They did.
citizenship and your responsibility to the
Only to the
community,
extent that
government.
he wanted to make fun of what he did know about the book.
Yeah, which was nothing because he never read it because someone told him the story of the book and he basically adapted the screenplay that already existed based on secondhand knowledge of a book that neither the people who told him about it or himself liked. So,
Well, that's good to know. That makes me feel better about it, actually.
because he
Like,
seemed to think the Heinlein was some sort of right-wing fascist dictator wannabe, and that's what he was making fun of in the movie. And that wasn't like I remember watching the movie thinking, none of this is in the book. What's going on here? At the same time, like Josh, I thoroughly enjoy that movie, and I
Yeah.
will watch
Yeah.
it when I used to have cable. I'll watch it whenever it comes on. It is a
I-
crappy movie.
I guess let me talk about things that I like about the movie then, okay? I thought most of the set design is pretty cool. Like I like it. Like I like the whole cassette futurism thing
The
where you got,
costuming design is great.
no, the costumes
I mean,
in
the costume
particular
design
are
is great.
bad. Like actually the costumes are really bad. I don't like the whole like I was really reminded of how much they're like the whole Hugo Boss Nazi thing. Like they are so much like there's one scene where Neil Patrick Harris walks out with wearing a black trench coat with the
Oh yeah.
Black
whatever
leather
t-shirt cap.
trench coat.
Yeah, and it's just like it didn't even fit
and the
with how
ranks
he's
were all
doing it.
white.
Yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
talking about things I like. Okay, so
I love the
did like-
uniforms.
I did
Listen,
like
you
the,
can say a lot of bad things about the Nazis, but you cannot diss their uniforms. They had great uniforms.
well, that's because Hugo Boss made their uniforms. They knew what they were doing. But that's the thing. Like I think if you're gonna reference that, it should have like actual criticism. I don't know. It should actually mean something. But anyway, like I liked the way, like inside the ships, I liked the way that they used CRTs. I thought the ship design themselves was kind of boring and obviously didn't make any sense. But
Oh, nothing militarily
Yeah.
or technologically about the movie made the slightest bit of
it all
sense.
looked like the inside of like an 80s, concept car with like the cool, controller, like I don't know, Last Starfighter controllers and like that. I liked that.
You had
I
like a
liked-
yoke.
Yeah, the yokes.
Joke's on you.
I really like the scenes of camaraderie where Rico is like they did like just a little bit of service to okay, they don't like each other and then they come together. And I really liked that. I thought that was really well done and the way that they meld as a unit. Um, I thought all that was really good, but then you have things happen that are just kind of random where Rico, makes the decision to have the guy take his helmet off during training and he gets shot in the head and Paul Verhoeven, I felt, was just trying to make a like it's a really gratuitous, you know, guy gets shot in the head, and then Rico gets
That's like
punished for it.
Paul Verhoeven's entire career is
Like the
Yeah,
helmet would have stopped that anyway, but
yeah.
and so everything about that just I think that kind of goes to the whole movie. Like it just doesn't make sense. But so I like that. I thought that the aliens looked cool. It really made me think back to like did anybody play Half-Life 2? Like the Antlions in Half-Life 2? They really made me think of that. And the insect designs of the brain bug, even though that made no sense. I like that a lot. And I like
sucked out
the
his brain.
um
That
and
was funny. Come on,
it
that
was
was funny.
That was the best line in the
No,
movie.
no, the
It
best
sucked out his
line,
brain.
the best line in that movie is, "Sir, why do I need to know throw a knife if I could just press a button and nuke them? Put
right.
your hand
Put your
against that
hand on
wall.
that wall. Yeah,
The enemy cannot press a button if you disable their hand."
which is
Oh, if
funny
I nuke them
because the
first?
bugs don't press buttons.
Yeah.
So
They
the
don't have
whole
hands.
concept of that was
They
just
don't have
thrown
hands
out
either.
the window.
It
Yeah,
would have been
exactly.
great if that had come back into play later and Rico had saved somebody's life by throwing a knife. That
See,
would have been
that would have
Right.
been that would have required too much subtlety from Paul Verhoeven, who does not have any concept of the term subtlety.
Yeah.
All right, so let's James finish with what he likes. We'll do
Go
all
ahead,
do what we
Sergeant.
like, and then we can talk about what we hate.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm thinking I
What
thought
I
that
like is going to be a short list.
I know. Futuristic Rio de Janeiro looked pretty cool. I thought they did a good job of like making that like the whole idea of, you know, future cities I thought was cool. I did like the little bit of service they give to Heinlein's ideas with the teacher and they start to have conversations about like what is citizenship and should only people who serve be able to vote? Like it felt like it was starting to do something, interesting, and then it just dumps all that. So I like that stuff. And I did like the all the 90s internet, like, would you like to know more? And it's like a although they didn't really seem to make that mean anything. I don't know. It was like, is somebody watching a game or something? I don't know. But I liked that stuff. So I'll pass it off from there.
Well, I'll be next because it's a short list. Like Dina Meyer and the song "I Have Not Been to Paradise" by Zoe Polidorus, and that's the end of all I liked about that movie.
And not Denise Richards.
No,
Go ahead, Josh.
I first of all, I liked the ship design. I thought it was kind of cool. As far as like rule of cool goes, I did like those ships. And actually, fun fact: a game that I play occasionally called Satisfactory, which is a factory building 3D game. Somebody built one of those ships in
Roger Young?
Satisfactory to scale and put like the working factory in the ship and you could walk through it and see everything. It was really neat.
Oh, that's cool.
But I love the ship design. The music was amazing. I
Music goes
absolutely
hard.
loved the music. I like whenever I'm writing like a sci-fi battle scene or anything like that, I will blast that soundtrack because it is so epic. I absolutely love it. Um, uh, the action scenes were pretty good. Obviously, some of them were overdone. Um, but I did like the action scenes. I liked the kind of futuristic weapons that they had. Uh, the armor was kind of
futuristic.
cool. Well, it was all like
Futuristic
stylistic. Like the
1999.
whole thing was stylistic.
97.
But yeah,
27, yeah.
right for its time, right? Um, uh, the shots
Aliens
of
came
the
out in 1986 and had
That's the
better
thing. I
looking
compare
weapons.
it like I think you compare this to Alien, and I feel like it could have been a lot more inspired. But go ahead,
Yeah.
Josh. I don't want to derail you.
well,
Aliens was what
as
I
with
wanted from
anything,
the look of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
as with anything, you can compare a movie to a better movie and say it could have been better. But just as a whole, if you just take it for what it is, it's a pretty decent flick with pretty decent special effects. The story's kind of lackluster in some ways. But if you don't compare Starship Trooper to Aliens, it's pretty good design wise, and even like CGI wise and that kind of stuff. Um, I saw a clip actually the other day, and I can't remember. It was a reel off of a cinema podcast, and they were talking about Starship Troopers, and they were talking about the the asteroid that killed everybody in Buenos Aires, and they go to the where the Denise Richards character is flying the ship, and all of a sudden this asteroid just shows up out of nowhere, like they didn't see it.
Scrapes
Like,
off the antenna.
oh my God! Like, first of all, that's the crazy thing. You should have seen that coming a mile away. Second of all, they were like,
They waited.
they
They waited.
postulated, yeah, they postulated that because the ship hit the asteroid, the ship collision actually knocked the asteroid off course, and then it wasn't coming from the bug planet, but it knocked it off course, and the knocking the asteroid off course is what sent it on the collision course for Earth, and that's what destroyed Buenos
Except
Aires.
she
And
was,
the
how
bugs,
far away was she when it hit it? She was another star system, wasn't she?
No, they were
Yeah.
out.
They were on
They were
Jupiter.
out by Jupiter.
Okay.
yeah, it was, but anyway, so
Don't expect
they were
science
saying that
from this movie.
the asteroid wasn't even sent by the bugs. It was just some random thing, and then they blamed it on the bugs after it destroyed Buenos Aires, so they didn't
Cover
have
up
to
for
pin
her
it on the
piloting
Navy
mistake?
guys. Yeah, from a piloting mistake. Yeah.
That actually makes a lot more sense.
That's
Right.
funny.
Except
Because
it's
it's like-
depressing that everybody on Earth was so stupid that they don't know asteroids can't go faster than light.
Yeah.
Well,
You
the
know,
bugs
some
have
of
a
the-
way of moving things, like folding space in the books, or at least it was
in
implied.
the book, yeah.
And like again, they took some of the things from the book and sort of.
But the
Use-
bugs in the movie don't have any technology.
Well,
They're just
Let's
They-
keep talking
they-
about things that we liked, and then we'll
Okay,
talk
yeah.
about things that were terrible. So, Josh,
Well, I did like the arrival and then that kind of moving through the planet when they finally get to that whatever planet where they fight them all.
And
when they
Dathu?
cap-
Ndathu.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
liked that. The scenery was great. The bugs sneaking up on him in that canyon was pretty cool.
Oh, you're talking
Um,
about Planet P when they're when
Planet
they defend
P.
the
Oh,
fort.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
fort scene is just.
Oh yeah.
That's like I want that game.
Yes.
I just want to play that game.
It was
You know?
epic, man. It was epic. But then like they had some really cool like escalation, with you had the bugs and they were horrible, and then you kind of had this mystery of the spitters or whatever they were, they're shooting up into ships. But then you get the flamethrower bug that comes out and ramps it up, and then of course the heroes got to do something crazy, and I like I said, take it for what it is. It's not the iconic military sci-fi epic scale thing. But I enjoyed the story for what it was. I definitely would have written it differently. But just
So was
taking
Robert
that.
Heinlein.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I didn't have any comparison because I didn't read the book. So I didn't know any different when I watched the movie. I was just like, nah, okay, it's a cool action flick, whatever.
well, I read the book after watching the movie too, and so I kind of went into it thinking it was going to be more like the movie, and was pleasantly surprised, I guess. I mean, I think Heinlein gets a lot of crap in general, and I really like that Heinlein is a writer that will take an idea that, I mean, I think he did agree with Starship Troopers, but he'll take an idea that maybe he doesn't agree with and still write a book about it. And I enjoy that about him. Like The Moon is a Harsh Mistress is another one that was really interesting, on what, Revolt on the Moon would actually look like. And then you get
I
And
love
Moon
that
Heart-
book.
and you look
Right
at the-
up until
at the-
AI
like the-
changed gender.
If you look at the philosophy from The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and put it up against the philosophy of Starship Troopers, it's obvious he didn't embrace both those philosophies
Right.
at the same time.
Yeah.
So
But
what
I think people,
he didn't
wanted to
necessarily
like-
believe that you should only vote if you've been in the military, but
that's what I mean. I think people read him too shallowly and think that he does. And so they criticize him for that. And that's
It's funny. Weren't we just talking about that? How like an author can't believe everything that they write about in their books because
Yep.
the villains and the heroes have different ideologies and beliefs. And here we're talking about Heinlein, who wrote a book in the 50s, and people criticized him about that versus
Yeah.
all his other works. And you have to read his whole works, then you kind of understand what his ideology is. He's also the guy who wrote the line, "An armed society is a polite society." So I mean, like, clearly he wasn't a leftist socialist. Clearly he wasn't a fascist.
He had some pretty liberal social ideas, though. Like maybe
Yeah.
later in his life, I don't know.
Right, libertine social ideas is how
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
describe
Yeah,
them.
he was a what are they called?
Libertarian.
Libertarian.
Yeah, but I think there's a bunch of weird stuff like in oh crap, where does Grot come from?
Stranger in a
Stranger
Strange
in a Strange
Land.
Land. Yeah, that's like the one Heinlein book. I mean, I haven't got through Number of the Beast, but I mean, we could talk about Heinlein another time. But
We should. I've read most
Yeah.
of his books, so
yeah. Um, so sorry, Josh. I think we got off.
we derailed.
No, you're good. I was
Yeah.
done with my stuff.
I
mean,
did.
I
Okay,
could-
things
But
I
Jeff is the one who's left to
Yeah.
say what he likes about the
things I
book.
like about
the
this movie. Listen, like I said in the beginning, no one actually thinks this is a good movie. Is it an enjoyable movie? That entirely depends on you. Is it a good movie in the sense that is it well shot? Is it well acted? Is it well written? Is it well scripted? Is it technically well done with great special effects? The acting is okay. The story is
Casper
okay.
Van Dien's not going to win an Oscar for anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I mean,
that guy's jaw, though,
Casper-
man. He's like, I don't think I've ever seen an actor aside from Henry Cavill that
Oh, he's
looks
got
like,
that.
yeah, he's just a straight up statue.
Yeah, and I really hope he's in Helldivers 2, the movie, because man, if there was ever an actor who should be, it should be him. I like the cast. I thought they were okay. I could have done without what's her face? Not Dina Meyer. Dina Meyer.
Denise Richards, yeah, I didn't like her
Denise
at all.
Richards. I every second she's on screen is painful,
Yeah.
especially when it's so friggin' obvious she's just stringing Johnny along for whatever reason and has no interest in whatsoever.
I was hoping
Yeah.
the bugs would kill her, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it really would have made a lot more sense for the bugs to kill her instead of Dina Meyer.
Yeah.
But that's what Dina Meyer gets for being naked on screen. She doesn't get any respect. So,
She has my
like
total
that.
respect.
The funny thing is the things I liked the most from the movie were the things that stuck from the book. All the basic training stuff was pretty cool. They adapted a scene in the book. Sorry, Josh, spoilers. If you haven't
If
read,
I ever read it,
seminal military sci-fi.
It's very
about
short. It would
combat.
take you a day to read, but
man, I got
in the
this
book,
cold.
he's in his suit and he miscalculates. He doesn't calculate lobbing a nuke, and it kills one of his squad mates in simulation, and that's why he's whipped in the book. And so I think Verhoeven probably thought that was dumb, and so wanted to kill somebody for real. Why they were using real ammunition in a situation where they got tased
Right.
didn't make any sense to me at all. But the way that they dealt with that, the way that Johnny dealt with it, and the way that Zim dealt with it, it was pretty close to the book. Though Johnny never even thought about washing out. He was gonna make it. Zim is by far and away the best character. Clancy Brown, everything he elevates everything he's in. The way he yells "medic," just that one line, "medic,"
Medic.
is just perfect. They ended the movie the way they ended the book with Zim capturing the brain bug that was in the book. Zim busted himself back down to private to do it so he could go fight the war. In the book, Zim served as Johnny's platoon sergeant, which I thought would have been really cool if they had done that in the movie once Johnny was lieutenant, but they kind of cut the movie off before you got there.
What I didn't get about the having to bust himself to private to join the war is that Radchek was a teacher, and he didn't have to bust himself to private. He came in as
he was
an
already an
officer.
In the
He's in
book,
reserves.
it wasn't.
Mention
He
that.
wasn't. He was that in the book. Radchek was a colonel, a retired colonel,
Mhm.
Oh,
and it wasn't. His name wasn't. He wasn't. It wasn't the Radchek who ran the Roughnecks. The lieutenant who ran the Roughnecks was never actually in the book. He died before Johnny was there, and Johnny took over the Roughnecks later on. His teacher Radchek was a colonel in the MI, retired, and had actually been Zim's company commander at one point. And so it was made much more sense in the book than the way they did in the movie. In the movie, I just assumed that they were they were taking so much losses that they just reactivated everybody. And Ratchet had been a lieutenant in the MI, a lieutenant at 50 years old. But in the book though, it was a lot different. Though I did like the fact that they brought him in from as the teacher in the movie. And again, Michael Ironside, another actor who elevates everything he's in.
Such a good
Fantastic
actor.
Sucked up.
So,
You guys remember Sequest?
yep,
I didn't watch it.
I loved when he joined Sequest.
yeah,
That
he got
was
so much better after he joined.
yeah.
I remember V.
I know what you're talking about, but I never watched it.
Yeah, he was he was the only good thing in that season of the show.
The show freaked me out as a kid. I really didn't like watching it.
I like the cat. I like the set design, the uniforms, the costumes were great. I thought the guns were cool. The way they used them was idiotic. I thought the bug design was pretty great. I thought some of the gore was good. I thought a lot of the gore was not good. What else?
Can I mention one other thing that I did like about it? I forgot. I like that medic machine that Johnny was in when they were
Yeah,
fixing.
I was
yeah,
thinking about
the
that.
back to
I thought that
tank.
was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the technology was really cool, and a lot of the concepts and themes were really cool. But mostly, it was like the thing that makes that. I was telling Becky this last night because she thinks the movie's ridiculous. Mostly, what makes that movie worth rewatching are these iconic scenes that are in the movie here and there. Like the "put your hand against the wall" or "you know what to do."
It's got a lot of
Bullets,
good
rubber
one-liners.
Yeah, it's just it's fantastic like that, and it has combined with that score that just has no business being that good for that kind of movie.
Who wrote it?
His name is, I just looked it up a minute ago. His name is Basil Polidarius.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
yeah.
did,
Well, that makes sense because his daughter is the one who sang the song "I Have Not Been to Paradise"
Yeah?
during the prom scene in Buenos Aires.
Oh,
Oh,
He-
okay, that's funny. I felt like
Zoe Polidorus.
I'm fairly confident that guy did the music for Hunt for Red October as well.
Yeah, and so you get these pretty good effects with decent acting, great one-liners delivered fantastically by some amazing actors, and the overall effect is a pretty fun movie. Does it have its problems? That's a segue into you saying, James.
Okay,
let's
well,
talk
you want
about
me
the
to take
movie's
over there?
problems now.
go ahead.
Okay.
Lead off.
I've got two main problems with the movie, and they're both
Got no imagination. We got that.
no, they're both functions of Paul Verhoeven's inability or unwillingness to actually look at the source material. The one is he didn't even look at the source material, and he took a movie that they put Heinlein's name on and used it to try to paint Heinlein as a Nazi. And the second problem is he used the excuse that this was a satire to make nothing in the movie make any sense whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, it's late 23rd century.
I want to point out the book takes place in 1999.
I'm not talking about the book. I'm talking about
I know. It's just for the audience.
It's the late 23rd century. It's the late 23rd century. We have faster than light travel. We have colonies on other planets around other stars. And the most advanced military tactic we have is to send infantry, not even in formation, just running like it's the ancient world, shooting guns in every direction at an enemy. No mines, no artillery, no air support, no orbital support, even though, I mean, they had the excuse that the bugs could take out the ships with their butt blasters, whatever they call them.
They were very slow.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. That's the other thing where he misunderstands the book, and why it makes the movie suck is that the bugs have no technology in the movie. If they had bugs, if he had just said, well, the bugs are intelligent and have technology of some kind, that to me would make a lot more sense. Probably it had to do with them not being able to afford space battles between the bugs and the Navy.
If you've
But
ever watched the CBC's Roughnecks cartoon,
no.
it was a decent mix of the movie and the book. They had
Hmm.
power armor, and they mentioned the skins and explained how the bugs have tech. I thought if you ever get a chance to watch that
Yeah.
cartoon, it is friggin' awesome.
But I think it all had to do with Paul Verhoeven wanting to make a philosophical and political point with the movie and not caring if the story he was telling made sense otherwise.
Yeah,
It
he
was a
read
movie
the first chapter, I think, of Starship Troopers and decided that Heinlein was
it
some
was
sort
a
of
movie
fascist
based on
miscreant.
themes. Like you said, it's a movie
Right.
based on themes, but he takes those themes and he looks like he wrote a fantasy movie instead of a science fiction movie.
If you
Well,
just
again,
looked
he
at it
didn't write it. It was already
visually,
written.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
visually,
know,
if you took it, image by image of like blasted bodies, soldiers wandering around like idiots, giant bugs, I guess, it makes more sense there. But for me as a satire, like the place it really fails is that the bugs are a legitimate enemy. Like we're not invading, like I feel like he was trying to say something about Vietnam, actually, when I think about, or maybe Gulf War #1, but it's a I think with the gore, he was really trying to get at Vietnam. But the fact is, the bugs are a legitimate enemy. And so everything that all the, proselytizing about this is a bad war and we shouldn't go fight it. No, we should. They're trying to eradicate us. Like, we need to go nuke them as soon as we possibly can. And if we can study them afterwards,
I
that's
didn't get that. I
great.
didn't get that impression at all that the bugs were actually trying
there
to
was
destroy
No,
us.
they said that they were sending asteroids out with spores.
Yeah, no, they said that, but if you
there were a
like,
couple of scenes
I
where
felt like he was saying the asteroid didn't really come from the bugs.
there were a couple of scenes where there was one where there was like these two talking heads arguing
Mhm.
about it that kind of
Yeah.
implied that maybe the bugs weren't the bad guys. And there's a few shots here and there that actually, despite Verhoeven's inability to be subtle with his nipples on the batsuit, um,
Huh?
that actually do imply that
That wasn't Verhoeven.
yeah,
That
wasn't it?
was
That
No,
wasn't.
that was oh
Not
God, what was his
Verhoeven.
he's the guy who did the X-Men films. He's a bad person too.
who
No,
did
no, that's
Batman
different.
Forever?
Oh, my bad. I thought it was Verhoeven.
No, no,
No,
no.
it was
Verhoeven did RoboCop and Total Recall.
Yeah, both gory.
Joel
Joel
Schumacher.
Joel
Schumacher.
Schumacher, yeah.
Yeah.
Schumacher, right. Sorry, those names. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm.
But there's
And
this
that's a
scene
different guy, and that's also a different guy than did the X-Men movies, by the way.
yeah,
I
he
thought
didn't do the
Schumacher
X-Men
did
movies.
X-Men movies.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, but
So there's the scene in Troopers where there's one of those news broadcasts and they talk
yeah, I'll
about
have to watch that
Mormon
again.
extremists
That too.
living on this
Like,
planet.
there's a trope of killing Mormons in science fiction.
I've noticed that. The funny thing about that scene, and spoiler alert for those who don't know, I'm LDS. The idea that
He
members
did
of
too
my
much LDS in the 60s.
would go to a foreign planet and not be armed to the teeth is just ridiculous. Everybody
One
sees
of the
Mormons
thing
like because the missionaries are so friendly and nice and clean cut, and we we have the highest population of veterans of any religious order per capita, and like most of us are armed to the teeth, so because we're prepared for the government to collapse at any moment. So bear that in mind when you see stuff on media about Mormons like going somewhere and dying. They did that in The Expanse too. They
Right.
made the Mormons all
Yeah, the
mild.
Mormons would not have let them steal their starship.
No,
Well, I
no.
think I mean, this is a whole other subject too, but the history of like expansion in the West and the Mormon Church leading a lot of that and having, that book I just read by Walter John Williams had a whole sub history about like why New Mexico was settled by different sects of the Mormon Church and how
We
that,
made an agreement with Lincoln to help fight, or we made an agreement with government to help fight the Mexican-American War if they would leave us alone because the Missouri government and the U.S. government had a policy of killing Mormons.
yeah.
And so the LDS Church at the time formed what's called the Mormon Battalion, and they marched from Utah to San Diego and ended up not actually getting used, and they ended up like going different places like Las Vegas and New Mexico to found cities that also had the church in them. That's an aside. There's
one
lots
of
of things in the movie that do that, though.
one of the things that I thought was interesting, like what you're talking about with the colonists and getting eradicated, and if they knew these bugs were there, then why did they go out with no military and that kind of thing? But the other thing was, it seemed to me that in all of their conflict, because it appears to me that they've had a long-standing conflict with these bugs, and they've had encounters with them before. But then out of nowhere, they see these bugs that are shooting energy balls out of their butts, and they have no idea what it is.
Intelligence said it was going to be sporadic and light.
Well,
Right. But if they've had all these contacts with the bugs haven't used these things before, like
fleet operations made no sense in the movie. Like,
right.
The invasion of Clendathu, again, he took aspects of the book and then shoehorned it into the movie. There was an invasion of Clendathu in the book, and it did go bad, but it wasn't because they just dropped 10,000 19-year-olds on the planet and told them to
It looked
yell.
like he was trying to make Clendathu look like Zulu,
Yeah.
the movie, you know?
But
I thought
yeah,
it was more
none
of
it
a
militarily from a military
highlighting of sorry, I thought it was more of like a highlighting of like the kind of dumb futility of meat at the grinder, like Vietnam or WW2, those kind of military actions where they were just throwing a whole bunch of
Vietnam
bodies
and
at the problem.
WW2, they used artillery and air support
Sure,
and
but they
naval
still there was a
support.
lot of elements of those wars that there was just meat at the grinder,
Well,
This
and
is
they were
more
just
like World
throwing.
War. This is actually this is more like the Boer War or the war against the Zulus in Africa by the British. This is like just
or
put it,
World War One when they have battles where what 15,000 to 20,000 people died in the first
yeah, but
fight.
World War One was very much an artillery war too, where you were looking at something far away you couldn't see that was.
Yeah, but the
This
idea
is
of the
more like
British,
this is
the
more
idea of the
like a
British.
small group of British and this huge horde of Zulus coming after them. It
Yeah,
seems
but
very
like
much like that to me.
the idea is like in World War One, the British would have their men get out of the trenches and charge machine gun nests by the thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
And
mean, Edge of Tomorrow did something similar too. And
yeah,
the whole
it's
idea,
dumb.
even World War One, like there's some, like even if you do a trench run, there's some semblance of order to that,
At
and
least,
there was just no, they just
yeah.
dumped them on the ground and they all bumbled around until the
At
alien.
least in Edge of Tomorrow, they thought there wasn't going to be any resistance. They thought they were doing a landing,
Mhm.
not a Normandy style invasion. Here, they knew there was going to be resistance and they were doing a Normandy style invasion. It made no sense in 97. It makes no sense now. It's one of those things that hurts the movie
Well, it's
more.
because Paul Verhoeven doesn't know anything about the military,
Yeah.
basically.
Well,
You know?
what is hard about, I mean, obviously it's hard to film a large scale invasion like that. Spielberg made, you know, D-Day look as harrowing as it was by showing little pieces of how people are moving on the beach and things like that. I feel like Verhoeven was trying to make them look like idiots, but if he was trying to make it look realistic, that would have been more interesting and there'd be a lot more tension. And I felt like he set it up with the frame story of showing the reporter getting eaten at the beginning, and then the whole time you're kind of wondering when you're going to get back to that. But still, it's. I mean, I was kind of thinking like, well, how would this be done well? You know?
Well,
Uh,
with the exception of Johnny, everybody who was heroic in that movie dies.
yeah.
Like when they make Clendathu, that guy runs out there and he's shooting all the bugs and then they rip him apart. And then, well, I guess everybody dies because that girl runs because she's afraid and
I
she
think
gets
Gary
out.
Busey's brother lives, Jake Busey.
Yeah, he's never heroic in that movie at all.
Maybe not. You're right.
But I think Verhoeven, like a lot of people in Hollywood, they're nihilists. They don't believe in her heroism. They don't believe that anybody actually would risk their life to save somebody else's life. And it seeps into their movies, but they can't make movies exactly about that because then nobody would watch them. And so
Like
you get
Atlas
this
Lebowski.
sort of half and half where sometimes people are heroic and sometimes they aren't, and they try to make it seem like it's futile.
Mm-hmm.
But after Clendathu, they sort of like, I don't know, maybe the writer was like, listen, this is stupid, it makes no sense. Because they like fire the air marshal or whatever and they hire a new one. And she's like, now we're going to use actual strategy. We're going to glass the planets from orbit and then we'll send in the MI with air support.
which is funny because they didn't do that at all. They just
No.
put all the
No.
people on the planet and send them
But even
out.
that was satire because they were just trying to show generals are stupid,
Yeah,
and
sure.
well, and
die.
Yeah.
was
Generals are
satire or
stupid.
historically accurate?
Well,
What's funny is though is that brings us to probably the best action scene in the entire movie. which is the battle at the fort, against the horde of bugs and the
The only
fire.
thing I didn't like about that scene is they were going because they lost contact, but you would think that they'd have enough time to get radio communication out and say we're under attack by the bugs. That seems like a really simple problem to fix. Instead of just making it a mystery where, oh, we've lost contact, and instead of flying the dropship to the base and landing in the base like they did when they picked everybody up or whatever, they dropped them off and then they patrolled to the base. And that didn't, I mean, I get it story wise and, building tension and all that. It is what it is. But as far as being meaningful or not, kind of what the heck are you doing kind of stuff, like that didn't make a lot of sense.
It's one of those. It's kind of like
It's
the
the
end
whole.
of,
Go ahead.
it's kind of like the end of Avengers: Infinity War. It would make more sense with our technology today. We would have done a better job of defending Wakanda than the Wakandans did, with like an armored cavalry unit and a couple of
Wakanda forever.
a couple of A-10s would have defended Wakanda way better. Why didn't they send one of those dropships to do a recon run, or one of those fighters that they showed
Right.
over the base? Because they could have been like, oh, hey, they're all dead.
Can fight.
Why not do it from orbit with a satellite that could probably see it?
Or a telescope from
It's like I said, he's writing a cowboys and Indians story with like the cavalry defending a fort and the Indians. It's like a 19th century story that he's telling, with 23rd century technology.
I
think that's one of the problems, I think, with a lot of military science fiction is they're writing stories that are essentially World War I or World War II stories in space.
Or Vietnam.
And those stories don't make much sense in a futuristic setting. If you're writing them, like for instance, if you write like the Maginot Line in space, that doesn't make much sense. Why would you write
that?
Be
surrounded in space.
Well, even on a planet, like that kind of event would be very unlikely because you're going to have air support and all that.
In space, no one can hear you be surrounded.
That's true.
The political aspects of the Maginot Line are very interesting because, you could have a stupid government that dumps a whole lot of resources into something that doesn't matter.
Wasn't there like a Maginot Line style thing in The Last Starfighter, if I'm not mistaken?
No, it was just a big line of ships that were coming toward the bad guys, and they just waited to pass and attacked them from behind. So one thing I wanted to know about this. The story Paul Verhoeven wanted to tell was a story that neither he or the screenwriter had the skill to tell. The story is what matters here, right? They were trying to tell the story, and they just didn't have the skill to pull it off. And I was just talking to another writer the other day, who I can't mention his name just now because there's nothing firm, but he wants to write in the Grimm's universe. And he was talking about how, like, I can write about admirals and I can write about generals because I served with these people. And I said, well, yeah, you can write about them, but do you have the skill to integrate it in such a way that the story is interesting? Because you can know all about something. You can know all about something and not be able to write about it in an interesting way. Verhoeven wanted to write this story about survival and struggle and the futility of war, and he just didn't have the skill to pull it off. And so he just borrowed
all the stuff we're talking about, a lot of the stuff we're talking about plot wise, that it's a weakness from plot holes. There's movies that have plot holes and weaknesses and things you can think of why it wouldn't have gone another way. But if you make a movie that is good enough and you have acting that is good enough and a script that is good enough, it won't matter because people love your movie enough that they won't care about that stuff. That's the difference between, like you mentioned, Infinity War. Infinity War, people will watch that and they'll talk about the Battle of Wakanda and there's like, except, they couldn't have done this because they'll make up reasons why wouldn't have worked. And they do that because it's a really, really good movie and they don't care about those things. But if you don't make a really good movie, if you make a movie with crappy acting and with crappy writing and crappy dialogue, I mean, with the exception of Michael Ironside and maybe, and what's his name? Clancy Brown, the Kurgan.
Burn up, get away.
if you make a movie with mostly bad acting by mostly B actors, and you do a ham-fisted job of satire, then you're going to get a large percentage of people that will point out all those little mistakes because you didn't take them out of their head enough to not worry about those mistakes. That's exactly like The Last Jedi. If the movie had been really, really good and the writing had been tight and the script had been tight and the acting had been good, nobody would care about the fact, oh, now starships have fuel in the Star Wars universe, or nobody thought to use the Holdo maneuver before. Nobody would have cared about that if the movie had been good enough.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, so people do.
On people and they give up.
And you're right. You're 100% right. He just didn't have the skill to pull it off, and so you're left with nitpicking every single thing about the movie. Again, still, for a lot of people, still a very enjoyable movie, but nobody ever said it was good.
Yeah,
it's a bubblegum. It's a bubblegum movie, and honestly, if he hadn't named it Starship Troopers, I would have watched.
Been a lot better.
I would have watched it. I would have had a good time, and it would have been one of those movies that maybe I'll put that on. But because they attached that crappy bubblegum movie to one of the seminal works of science fiction ever written, and the very beginning of military science fiction, I don't give it that benefit of the doubt, or that it's just a bubblegum movie. It's a bubblegum singer.
It's like when a singer goes on to like one of those competition shows and then sings like a Mariah Carey song or something that they have no business singing. And like, you're probably an okay singer, but you picked a song that everybody knows and is sang by, like, the song from the Bodyguard movie. Like, you've no business singing that song,
Now, I think
calling the Starship Troopers.
The counter is that there are 7 movies in this franchise now, and
no one said it didn't make money.
Somebody had made money off them. I mean,
no one said it didn't make money.
Oh yeah. Oh, gotcha. I mean, I think
it also inspired a whole lot of stuff.
All those sequels are direct to video. Come on, James.
I mean, they exist, right? I mean, the fact that it says Starship Troopers is enough for somebody to greenlight something at this point, and
not to mention watching.
greenlight a bunch of low budget direct to video movies. I don't know if that counts.
Not to mention there was an Emmy award winning 3-season cartoon from CBC that was aired off of it, and they're talking about doing a remake. So,
by the way, the original title was Bug Hunted Outpost 7.
Okay, there we go.
One of the things that I think is interesting about movies like Starship Troopers, like you guys just mentioned, is that if it wasn't called Starship Troopers, it would be a completely different feel of the movie. But I think that happens a lot where you look at, if you look at the Jack Ryan movies or the Jack Ryan Amazon show, that would have been really, really good. I mean, 2 of the seasons are good, but it would have been so much better if it hadn't been named Jack Ryan.
Or with this Without Remorse movie.
I was just going to mention that Without Remorse, on its face it's an okay movie. There's a lot of unfactual stuff and unrealistic stuff that happens in that movie. But if they hadn't called it Without Remorse, would have been a good movie.
If they hadn't said, "Hey, let's take Tom Clancy's best book that is universally loved and turn it into a crappy movie,"
right?
Okay. By the way, for how much it made, the budget was $100 million. The movie made $121 million, so it lost about $80 million.
I thought it made 50 domestic and 120 worldwide.
120 worldwide is a combination of domestic and worldwide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and since movies give half of their box office to the theater, and they spend about
80% in other countries, so it's even worse in other countries.
So by Hollywood math, it was a win because they could write off other stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, the way box office works, say you have a movie that cost $100 million to make, just to make it a round number. You're probably going to spend $50 million on marketing, because you usually spend half the production budget on marketing. So it'd be $150 million that you spent. You have to make twice that to break even. So you'd have to make $300 million. So this movie.
On a side note, I thought it was
Let me
really
finish.
funny.
This movie at 100 million would have had to make $200 million worldwide to break even. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I thought it was really funny is after 2020, all of a sudden Hollywood started talking about the worldwide box office take. Because up until 2020, it was never mentioned because they don't make money off the worldwide box office.
They do
They
make
don't make
they
a
do make
dime
money.
from China.
Actually, it was well before that they started talking about worldwide box office because Avengers Infinity War made like vastly more overseas, and the Chinese market became huge prior to 2020. The Chinese market was a huge. That's why like a lot of the Marvel movies will add scenes that take place in China
Yeah,
just
I know.
to get the Chinese market.
But those mentions of worldwide box office in those movies were because they were unusual and they broke records.
Yeah.
Now it's whenever the media is talking about a box office, they don't even bother domestic. They just say worldwide as if because they're trying to pump the numbers because movies don't make as much money as they used to.
It depends on who you listen to. I listen to a couple of movie podcasts, and they talk about how what's most important for opening weekend for an American movie is the domestic box office.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, a podcast is different than say
yeah.
You're hearing it on CNN or MSNBC or Fox.
Well, that's your problem. I don't listen to any of those.
or Variety or all the major media outlets that report on box office anymore.
Yeah.
They immediately do worldwide because it makes it sound like the movie made more money. Like Captain America, its opening weekend was $120 million. No, it wasn't. It was 80
Well,
million.
it was.
Story about how bad it was.
Basically, the way it works is for domestic box office, you make 50 cents of every dollar. For worldwide box office, it depends on where it is, but it's between 35 to 25 cents of every dollar.
Yeah.
So you make a significant amount less in foreign box office than you do on domestic, which is why, for instance, Force Awakens, first Star Wars sequel, it broke a record for domestic box office that will probably never be.
They made 800 million domestic, I think.
Yeah, it was more than any movie it made domestically.
How our dreams were crushed.
Even though it didn't make as much money as say like Infinity War. As a total, it made a profit more money because domestic box office was so much greater.
But
so one thing I wanted to note about Starship Troopers, from a storytelling perspective that I did like was the escalation of the bugs. And I think that when you're thinking about an adversary, or it's always fun to see an adversary that ramps up in their capability. And then I like to see the heroes of the story responding to that shows that they're hopefully smart people or can use new technology. Or like one of the things that bugged me about Planet P was that, oh crap, we have flying bugs. Oh no, look, a flying bug just like grabbed one of us. And then nobody seems to respond to that again. Like they can fly, and so I think that was one of the challenges here, like Josh brought up, was that you never quite know what the bug's capabilities are. You don't okay, they can fling asteroids, but we don't see tech. They have brain bugs, but they don't seem organized. All we ever see are, workers until the giant,
it's like a bad guy Deus Ex Machina where they
exactly.
The thing with the asteroids is I got the distinct impression when I watched the movie that the asteroids that hit Earth never came from the bugs.
They space folded the asteroids in the movie.
And
they said that there was a gravity disruption. They showed.
Yeah, they said that in the movie. They said that. That's what the military said. But I'm saying
in the movie,
I got the impression it was a lie.
No, in the movie they show empty space and then there's a distortion and the asteroid appears.
Right. I could have sworn that's what they said. There were spores in the asteroid, and that's how they were spreading the bugs.
Yeah, that's true.
But it still didn't make a lot of sense because the math involved in shooting an asteroid out of your own asteroid belt to fold space to another planet, another solar system, to hit their planet would mean that they would have to have people in that solar system to know where the planet was when you shot the asteroid out to be able to do the math.
Well, also, if it's the 23rd century and we have FTL, don't we have like asteroid seeing technology that can blow asteroids?
We don't have any of that.
Eventually.
We don't even have electric toothbrushes in that future. So.
Yeah.
And Rio de Janeiro apparently has mountains in that future. So who knows what's going on.
I mean, I find it more
I've never
terrifying
been there.
like
I didn't
that
know if it did have mountains or not.
that object that like moved through our solar system at near the speed of light that just, is randomly moving around the universe, that there's objects like that that could just appear and nobody's tracking it because
And
it's
that totally was normal. Totally, absolutely normal for a plane, for a rock to come in at 0.8 C, turn and leave, in 8 months. Totally normal. Nothing to think about there,
See,
people.
but that's the thing,
I
because
think
it takes such a long period of time. Like humans are so bad at, worrying about something unless it's going to happen right now, when in fact that's how it will it would happen, is it would take a long time.
But it would not happen with something traveling at 3/4 the speed of light.
If it slowed
what I
down, that would
think
have been even freakier. But,
what I think this movie ultimately says about the genre is that regardless of how unreasonable and unrealistic and how crazy the movie is, there is a fan base because, like Rick said, they spawned several movies, TV
Thanks.
shows, and all of
James said
that. Um,
You said it
yeah,
too. Like you
sorry.
said, it was direct to DVD.
Yeah.
that.
But it's also the difference from like realistic mil sci-fi to rule of cool mil sci-fi. And both of those things have a really solid place in the space of mil sci-fi because people do like the rule of cool, and they do like real. You could do both at the same time. You could just do
About to say
rule of
you could do
cool.
both.
Um, but it again, it depends on the story you're trying to tell and whether or not you agree with Paul's version of Starship Troopers or not. This apparently was the story that he wanted to tell. And if you have a story that you're trying to tell that deals more with rule of cool than it does with realism, have at it. I mean, most of my sci-fi, mil sci-fi, is grounded in reality, but I will put in rule of cool all day long. If it's something awesome that I want to put in the story, I will do it and I'll figure out a way to make it work. I think the critical point to understand in writing it is if you're going to do rule of cool and you're going to say Starship Troopers is my model and I want to do rule of cool like Starship Troopers, you need to do a much better job explaining why that rule of cool isn't broken
Mhm.
because there's so many things in this movie that they do rule of cool that don't make any sense, and could be fixed, maybe with a paragraph or a line here or there. It's just throw away, let's fix it. Um, what is it? Chekhov's gun kind of thing. Um, but I really enjoy rule of cool in fiction. And I think that it definitely has a huge place in mill sci-fi.
Josh, here's a movie that does rule of cool, and yet we don't have these arguments about it, is Aliens.
Sure.
Aliens did a lot of Aliens was blatantly Vietnam in space. You
Yeah.
could tell that.
The
But
difference
it
between
was
aliens
done
and
it was done so well that nobody sits around nitpicking it.
well, and the difference I think between aliens and Starship Trooper when it comes to rule of cool is Starship Troopers was so over the top with everything that they did. The rule of cool stuff was also over the top. And so nothing really kind of grounded anybody in the story. It was just all of it was over the top. And Aliens, they have a lot of rule of cool, but there was a lot of grounding that happened in that
They
movie.
had characters that you cared about.
Really good characters, really good story. Some stupid characters, but some really smart characters, capable characters.
How many
Um,
combat drops?
yeah,
But I
right.
mean,
Have you ever been confused for a man?
looking at the characters from Starship Troopers, I mean, Rico. The main impression I got of him from the movie was that he was a brainless jock who was led around by his, by Denise Richards'
Big
character.
heart.
Yeah, his heart. And Dizzy was a better character, but she also was like totally just enthralled with Johnny. And I did not respect her for that. And basically, those are the main characters in the movie. That Rico and Carmen are the two main characters, and I don't like either one of them. And I was
Right.
actively rooting for Carmen to get killed because she's such a bad person. And
You have
Rico's
to have good
an idiot.
characters. If you're gonna do rule of cool, you have to ground them with amazing characters.
Yeah.
And if you
No,
don't do that,
that's probably why the movie didn't make $1 billion and it didn't spawn theatrical sequels and whatnot. But it does have a place in, oh hey, Starship Troopers is on TNT and I just flipped through the channels. I'm gonna sit down and watch it.
yep.
It has that place, and that's not the worst place to be, cinema wise. Paul Verhoeven's gonna go down in history as being known for RoboCop and Total Recall anyways, so he's allowed to screw some stuff
And
up.
Total Recall, by the way, just a general Paul Verhoeven thing. I enjoy Total Recall and RoboCop when I watch them, but I have not been able to rewatch those for literally decades because Paul Verhoeven has this gleefully sadistic tone to his movies that I don't enjoy watching. I don't enjoy them the second time around. Total Recall, and there's also debate whether all this crap is inside what's his name's mind, but like there's a scene where he holds up an innocent civilian who got wounded as a shield, and the guy just keeps getting shot over and over again with blood flying, and it's like
He was one of the bad guys, but yeah, no, I get you.
no,
I like
this
the
was
remake
this was
of-
not one of the bad guys. This was a
The
guy
remake
who
of
got
the-
shot just walking behind Arnold Schwarzenegger's character.
The
And then
remake
also
of
got
Total
killed in this
Recall
movie.
and the remake of RoboCop. I like both of those movies better than the originals.
I like the
I'll
remake
say
of
it.
RoboCop a lot.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that he'd be most well known for Showgirls, quite honestly, but I forget.
wasn't Paul Verhoeven, was
I
it?
don't
God,
associate
no.
him with
Ah, you
RoboCop
did
or
it.
Total
You did
Recall.
Oh
did it.
no.
It was Schumacher.
No, Verhoeven. I just verified it before I said
Oh,
it.
was it? Oh,
Yeah,
Was
it was Verhoeven. Like I don't
No,
even
I
when I
guess it
think of
was, yeah.
RoboCop or Total Recall, I forget that he directed those movies. But you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
now
I'm
that
the
we're
same
explaining
way.
it,
It's
comes out.
even watching Starship Troopers, I was hitting the fast forward button because his gleeful let me explode human bodies all over the place.
Right.
Also, he's like a lot of people in Hollywood, probably a member of that club that visits Diddy's house a lot. Because his way to get the actresses to take their clothes off for the shower scene was he was in there naked with them as well. And so, you got to remember when you're talking about Hollywood, you're not talking about good people here. So, skilled, just not good.
See, that scene, while it's meant to be titillating, actually kind of does
Ah.
dual work about their culture, right? And their camaraderie. And I like the way they're
And the
wrapped.
fact that
so
everybody in the future is
unrealistic.
really good looking.
Well, that, but I
I'm
mean,
sorry. Whenever I see that crap in movies, I'm just like, do you not remember you do remember what it was like to be a 19-year-old boy? And there's no possibility of those kids being in that shower with those girls. None.
well, I mean,
whatsoever.
man, I spent time. I mean, I lived in Germany, and they have a totally different view of nudity than we do. And it's. I think that depending on the culture and the way people
I'm not
are
talking about culture. I'm talking about biology, James.
well, yeah, of course, but I mean, I never went to a nude beach, but Germans would look at me like, "Why wouldn't you go to a nude beach? It's not a big deal."
Right.
This is a
Yeah,
bunch of fat
especially if they're
people.
a guy.
I mean, I'm acknowledging that those people can exist, and in a
Okay, so Germany is the
egalitarian
place
future.
where they had to have their Supreme Court strike down a law that was going to force women into prostitution because it's legal there. And if they were on public assistance and they have to get a job and the brothels were hiring, then they had to go work at the brothel or lose their public assistance.
I'll
So,
just look that one up.
um,
I mean, other
Guys.
countries,
yes,
like
other
a lot of Nordic
other
countries are the same way. It's not just
other
Germany.
cultures have a different view on nudity. No culture has a different view on sex when it comes to men and women. And you put a 19-year-old boy in a shower with a bunch of hot 18-year-old girls, I promise you biology is going to take over. Even if nothing happens, there is something that's going to happen. So, those
Think about
movies
baseball. Think about baseball.
Think
are
about baseball.
gratuitous, and they're for the director to walk in there and look at a bunch of naked girls.
Oh yeah, I'm not.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
I guess
from
I like the
logic
idea of
standpoint.
they didn't have to be in the shower. Like there were other scenes where they were showing
in the
camaraderie,
barracks.
razzing each other.
Paul
Yeah.
Verhoeven is the reason they now have intimacy coordinators in movies.
Yes. And on that bombshell, I hope everybody enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Watch Starship Troopers if you haven't. Read the book if you haven't.
Read the book.
It's a really good book. Not
Hopefully
all.
next time we review a movie that most of us like.
If you have a movie you want us to review that we haven't talked about, please throw it in the comments. Let us
Did
know.
we do The
on
Last Starfighter
Discord.
yet?
No,
We
we
have
haven't. We should do that.
Need to do The Last Starfighter.
Yeah.
I do have one question before we go. And Josh, I'm so sorry because I hassle you about this all the time. I sent you armor. I know our readers are just, our viewers are just on the
Oh.
edge, knowing, asking, have you read it yet?
I've got it on my somewhere. No, I had to move my office, so no, I haven't read it yet, and I have it stacked
And I
somewhere.
apologize for hassling you so much about not reading these books.
No, it doesn't bother me at all. I know I have it.
Good.
Well,
I
at
sent him a
least
couple of
armor-
books years and years ago. He still hasn't read. So
I still have those. They're on my shelf.
No, and that's something that if we do talk about armor, it'd be an interesting thing to discuss because armor kind of does the same thing. It dumps its soldiers in the middle of a bug hunt. But I wasn't as mad about that one because I think you're seeing it through the eyes of a competent person. And that'd be something to talk about later.
Yeah, we should do an episode on armor once Josh has read it.
Yep.
And then we can talk about Halo because Halo is based on armor.
Got to play some Halo.
I've
As soon
never
as I'm
played
done
Halo,
reading
though.
The Gray Man, I will, or Midnight Black, I will read Armor.
All
So
right,
I've
can I
never
play-
played Halo.
Can I play Helldivers solo or do I have to play multiplayer?
you can play
I think-
Helldivers with me.
Because I feel like Helldivers, it sounds like there's a lot of responses to Starship Troopers.
Oh
in
yeah,
the way that it's made. So I mean, I'm real curious to play that game.
it is a good amalgamation between the satire of the movie, because they call it managed democracy, and the intensity of the book. So if you do want to play Helldivers 2, let me know. I'll play with you. I love that game. And like the movie, man, the music in Helldivers 2 goes hard, and
Yeah.
it's no business being that good. So, anyways, we should go.
Awesome.
Everybody, thank you so much for
Thanks for hanging
joining.
out with us. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Adios.